Welcome to the Wife Stories YouTube channel. New video every day, and don't forget to subscribe. Here we go.
It was all for love. I remember that exact thought flashing in my mind like a siren, quick and piercing, but gone in an instant. My own breath caught in my throat, and I heard hers, my wife's breathing, too light, too careless, as if nothing were wrong, as if life was perfect, as if there was no storm of betrayal lurking in every corner of our house. I clutched the glass of wine on the table, the red liquid trembling because my hand was shaking. Her voice echoed in the back of my head, telling me red matched the painting. She lifted the glass in a toast that sounded hollow, her lips parting with a barely audible sigh. I didn't answer at first. My pulse was pounding, my heart in my ears. Then gradually I pulled myself together. I steadied my breathing, forced my grip to loosen around the stem of the wineglass. I told myself to calm down, because I didn't want her to see just how much I already knew, or how much more I was about to learn. That painting, God, it had been in front of my face for weeks. At first it was just swirling shapes, a riot of reds, browns, and gold. A contemporary piece, part of the new exhibit she was curating at the gallery. Evelyn was proud of it, kept telling me it embodied some coded message. I only half listened. If I'm honest, art was always her passion, and I used to be able to share in that delight. Then again, maybe I let the daily grind wear me down. I'd come home too tired to think about brushstrokes or painterly techniques, but that night, I finally looked deeper. I saw hints of figures hidden in the shapes, human silhouettes, and behind them, dates, addresses, subtle notations, all scattered in brushstrokes that nearly camouflaged them. I didn't fully grasp what it meant, just that there was something cryptic, something personal, something about me and about her, and about someone else. I found the old photo album a few days later. In it, I saw her in those exact poses, wearing the same red dress. But she wasn't with me. She stood next to another man, close to him, the same curve in her spine, the same tilt of her chin, the same doors in the background, the same pattern of swirling shapes on the walls behind them. I flipped page after page, staring at photographic evidence I had never seen before. How was that even possible? When had she taken these pictures, and why? My breath started coming in short, frantic bursts again, and her breathing, somewhere in the house, sounded so damn normal, so unbothered. I swallowed the urge to confront her right then. She was in the kitchen, humming to herself as if everything was fine. I slammed the album shut, slid it under the bed for the moment, and resolved I would find out more before I let rage blind me. That was when I began my silent war. I replaced everything in the house. The detergent, the soap, the diffuser oils. I chose scents that smelled of burned paper and dust, an ashy, stale odor. It was an odd choice, but symbolic, because to me, that was what our life was becoming. A pile of burnt, crumbling remains. She didn't understand. She wrinkled her nose in confusion, asked me, "Why does everything smell so strange?" She tried to laugh it off. I just nodded, telling her it was a new brand, playing ignorant. Inside, I was waiting, watching. I wanted to see if she would notice how the air was dying, how the house felt suffocated and collapsing like the inside of my chest. But Evelyn stayed oblivious, or pretended to be. She went about her routine. Fine dinners, quiet evenings, nights spent working late. I paid attention to every discrepancy in her schedule. I let the anger fester in me, controlling it, channeling it. Eventually, I set up a camera in our home gym. It wasn't out of raw paranoia. It was out of principle, a principle I'd never fully articulated to myself before. I wanted proof, not just of her physical betrayal, but of everything. Her lies, her stolen time, the satisfaction on her face when she thought I was out of earshot. I wanted to see if she really brought that man here, under my roof, if she so blatantly disrespected everything we built. The day I saw them on that camera, my knees almost gave out. The footage showed them walking in, arms around each other, pressed tight, kissing without hesitation, and it was a level of shamelessness that stung more deeply than I could have imagined. I had never felt so physically ill. My stomach twisted, and I had to stop the playback a few times just to catch my breath. But I forced myself to watch every second. They were in my space, in the place I had designed for my own workouts. I recognized the reflection of the treadmill and free weights in the corner, the water dispenser where Evelyn used to sip from my sports bottle. The two of them were mocking me by their mere presence. She thought I'd never find out. Thought I was asleep at the wheel. I didn't scream at her, didn't throw furniture or break mirrors. No, my control was cold, methodical. Because once you see something that rips out your heart, you either explode or you freeze into ice. I chose ice. She came back from the gym that night, her hair disheveled, a slight blush in her cheeks, the outline of sweat cooling on her collarbone. I asked casually, "Workout go okay?" She nodded, forcing a quick grin. Then I said, very quietly, "Say it honestly. Where were you, Ev?" She blinked, and for a moment her eyes flickered with alarm. "What do you mean?" she said, her voice too high-pitched to sound normal. I studied her. I forced my face into a mask of calm. "Just tell me the truth," I said. "That's all I want." She turned away, dismissing me, and went to rinse her face in the bathroom sink. I said nothing more. I watched the water swirl down the drain, imagining her guilt going right along with it. She never offered a confession. She never admitted a thing. That, in some twisted way, gave me the final impetus to do what I did next. 1 week later, I staged the moment. I invited friends, people from the neighborhood, relatives from out of town, old acquaintances who were around that weekend. I told them it was a special occasion, an art presentation, that Evelyn would be showing off her latest curation. She seemed flattered by the idea, probably imagining it was a sign I still appreciated her world of painting and sculpture. She showered, dressed elegantly. She had no clue. The living room was crowded that evening. I set up a projector against a blank white wall. The lights were dimmed. Voices filled the air, polite chatter about the new exhibit or the wine we served. I stood near the center, my heart pounding in my ears, but outwardly I was composed. I gave a short speech about discovering hidden layers in art. People politely listened, some more interested in sipping their drinks than hearing me talk. Evelyn smiled at me, though I could sense her slight confusion about this sudden interest of mine in her work. Then I projected the images, not the explicit video, but those cryptic paintings she had been so enthralled by. They flashed onto the screen in large, bold colors, and I explained every symbol, every date, every address. I pointed out the significance of each swirl. My tone was educational, calm, as if giving a formal presentation at a museum. I told them how these hidden messages lined up with real places, how the addresses corresponded to hotels, how the dates matched days I was away on business trips. The more I revealed, the quieter the room became. Some guests exchanged nervous glances. They saw where this was heading. Some of them, at least. Evelyn went pale. I let the silence stretch for a few seconds before I said, "I'm not proud of everything I've done in my life. I've lied, I've made mistakes. I'm far from perfect. But right now, I'm clean." I heard Evelyn inhale sharply. I locked eyes with her. And her. I paused deliberately. Well, she's not. My hand moved, clicking a remote. Suddenly, the painting faded, replaced by the stark video from the gym camera. The hush that fell over the room was absolute. I heard a few people gasp. My stomach twisted into a knot, but I watched every second, forcing myself not to look away. Because this was my proof, and I wanted her to feel it like a blow. On screen, she was in his arms, that same red dress on the floor, their bodies entangled. The lover's face was partially turned away, but there was no mistaking who it was. No mistaking the sweaty intensity, or the way she seemed to forget the entire world existed. That raw, explicit moment only lasted a few seconds on screen, but it felt like an eternity. Then, without warning, I shut it off. The projector went dark. The living room lights remained dim, leaving us in a weighted, uneasy atmosphere. Nobody spoke. A glass clinked in the corner, someone's trembling hand setting it down. Evelyn stood rooted in place, shock and horror etched on her features. Her mouth opened, then closed, forming no words. Some of our guests stirred, swallowing uncomfortably, glancing between her and me. I could feel their pity and their fear. It was the exact reaction I anticipated. I let the silence swallow us all. Then I breathed in and said, "Those were the illusions. Those were the secrets. Now you all know." I nodded toward the door, indicating the show was over. A trickle of people began to leave. Some murmured apologies or tried to pat me on the shoulder. I barely registered them. A few looked at Evelyn, opened their mouths as if to console her, but none knew what to say. My calm was a shield. On the inside, I was crumbling, burning, but I refused to release that fury in front of them. The final guests left, and it was just the two of us. She stared at me, eyes glistening, mouth trembling. "Why did you do that?" she whispered, voice thick with tears or anger or both. I almost laughed. "Why?" I repeated. "Because I wanted you to see the truth, Evelyn. Not just in private. In public. I wanted you to feel how it is to be exposed." She began to sob. Even then, I found myself searching her face for genuine remorse. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice cracking. I was lost. I didn't think." I shook my head, refusing to let her words dig into me. I walked past her, went to the bedroom. My heart was pounding wildly as I opened the closet. I pulled out every single one of my shirts, pants, jackets, shoes, ripping them from the hangers in calm, methodical movements, letting them tumble to the floor. I turned to her, standing in the doorway, mascara streaking her cheeks. "You can stay it," I said, "but you won't fix this. I'm done." She swallowed, stepping back. "Don't do this," she said softly. "We can figure it out. I'll end it. I silenced her with the flat of my palm in the air, as if telling a dog to stay. "You don't get it," I said. "I'm already gone." I scooped up my clothes, carried them out in a couple of suitcases. I grabbed my keys, then turned one last time to glance at her. She looked small, as if she'd shrunk. Guilt or despair flickered on her face. But that didn't move me. I walked out of the house, took the front door key off my key ring, and locked her inside. I slipped the front door key into my pocket, maybe out of habit, maybe out of some final sense of control. By the time I reached my car, my hands were trembling. My skin felt cold, but I refused to break down. I started the engine, stared at the steering wheel for a few seconds, and then pulled away into the night. That was the grand finale in front of an audience. That was how I exposed her. But there was more to the story that I lived, minute by minute, hour by hour, in the days that followed. I remember my phone lighting up with messages, some from concerned friends, some from relatives, a few from colleagues who'd heard rumors. People I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly wanted details. Some offered me a place to crash. Others wanted to know if I was okay. And I answered them with the same monotone line. "I'm fine." I wasn't, of course. But I clung to that emotional numbness because anything else would have drowned me in fury or heartbreak. I got myself a motel room outside the city for a few nights. The bed was small. The walls painted a depressing greenish color. There was a single lamp on the nightstand that flickered sometimes, reminding me of a dying firefly. I'd lie there at night with a half-empty bottle of cheap whiskey on the floor, running my finger over the rim of the shot glass, thinking back on the years Evelyn and I had spent together, wondering when exactly she'd slipped away from me. I thought about the intangible pieces of our marriage. When we first met, how easily she used to laugh. How we'd go out to dinners and have wine that tasted vibrant and alive, not the dull dryness we'd been sipping lately. I tried to figure out at what point I became so predictable that she didn't even bother hiding her affair well. The painting, the date codes, the addresses, they were practically under my nose the whole time. She must have had some craving for danger, or maybe she wanted to get caught. I didn't know, and it made me feel sick. I started chain smoking again. I used to smoke in college, quit after we got married. But I needed something to calm my nerves. My gym routine fell apart. Some part of me recognized the irony of it, that I'd installed a camera in the gym, then basically abandoned the place. But I couldn't make myself go back. Working out had been one of my coping strategies, but now it felt tainted. Like every bench press or treadmill jog would remind me of them clinging to each other, sweaty and breathless. It was poison in my mind. During those nights in the motel, I had a few phone calls with people who tried to talk me through it. One was my cousin, who said, "Man, come stay with us. Don't hide out in a crappy motel." But I told him no. I wanted to be alone. I realized I wasn't even sure how to be with people anymore. Everything I thought was real, my home, my wife, my trust, seemed fake now. I wanted to be invisible, drift in my own anguish until I either dissolved or found a new shape. It wasn't a dramatic heartbreak. It was a slow, smoldering emptiness. I remember waking up every morning feeling like my insides had been hollowed out. Then I'd check my phone, see a text from Evelyn, "Please talk to me," or "Let's figure this out." Sometimes she'd call, and my phone would vibrate on the cheap wood of the nightstand. I never answered. It was enough that I listened to her voicemails, where she cried or pleaded or got angry in turns. One night, I decided to drive back to the house. It was past midnight. The streets were quiet. I parked a block away. Just sat there and stared at the dark silhouette of what used to be my sanctuary. Light glowed from one window, our living room. I could almost see her pacing back and forth, maybe on the phone, maybe just waiting. And I felt a wave of bitterness so sharp it made me clench my teeth. I wanted to go inside, slam the door, tell her everything that was boiling in my head. But I stayed in the car. I chain smoked until my lungs hurt, and eventually, around 2 a.m, I drove away. I started recollecting the last real conversation we had before everything erupted. It had been about a month earlier. She poured a glass of wine, and I asked, "You good, Evie?" She answered something vague about being stressed with the gallery. Then I asked if she wanted to go away for a weekend, just us, maybe to the coast. She said it was a nice idea, but she never picked a date. Later, I realized she was busy with him. That was the moment I put down my own glass, feeling an odd tension in the air. If only I had confronted it then. But I told myself she was just busy, that everything was fine. People do that, right? We get comfortable ignoring the signals because facing them might break everything we hold dear. When I finally decided to respond to her calls, it was with a single text. "We have nothing to discuss." She sent me a string of messages, confessions, apologies, rationalizations. She said her affair with Leo wasn't serious, that it happened because she felt stifled. She used that word, stifled, as if the stable life we'd built was some kind of prison. Part of me wondered if, on some level, she was right. Had I been too wrapped up in my own routine to show her excitement or spontaneity? But that line of thinking infuriated me. Sure, I wasn't the same starry-eyed guy who wrote her love letters in college, but I was consistent. I took care of her. I gave her space to pursue art. I never tried to control her. If that wasn't enough, maybe nothing would ever be. Maybe she just needed an endless series of new thrills. Eventually, I found a small apartment to rent, a modest place near the outskirts of the city. It wasn't homey, exactly. A bare living room with a fold-out couch, a kitchen with mismatched dishes. But it served as a place to land. I put up a calendar on the fridge, started marking off days. I told myself each X was a step toward rebuilding a version of me that didn't revolve around Evelyn. I set up my old laptop on a cheap desk, Tried to throw myself into my real estate work, emailing clients, scheduling showings. It felt mechanical, but at least it gave me an anchor. Weeks passed. Friends told me that Evelyn had been seen less and less at the gallery. Some said she looked awful, lost weight, or cried in her car. Part of me got a grim satisfaction hearing that. Another part felt pity. She wasn't a monster in my eyes. She was just someone who'd torn me apart for reasons I still struggle to understand. There was a difference. Monsters can't help themselves, but people can. She chose to betray me. During this time, I also heard rumors about Leo. Word was that he quit his job at the upscale gym. He apparently parted ways with them after some incident, possibly related to a conflict with another client. I didn't know the details. I didn't really care, except that it confirmed he was as reckless in his professional life as he was in his personal. Good riddance. Let him run. Let him ruin something else. I carried on, counting the days. I'd see the old photos I'd salvaged from the house. Pictures of me and Evelyn on vacations, at weddings of friends, in front of the new house the day we bought it. She was smiling so brilliantly in some of those shots, leaning her head against my shoulder. And I was smiling too, actually excited for the future. The contrast was a punch in the gut. It reminded me that everything I had was dust now. But a strange thing happened. As more time passed, I realized that the anger, though still present, was no longer my guiding force. I started feeling hollow. There were days when I wanted to cry but couldn't. Nights when I lay on the fold-out couch, staring at the ceiling, physically aching from the emptiness. But ironically, that emptiness was also a form of liberation. Because once you have nothing to cling to, nothing to hold you back, you can start rebuilding. Brick by brick. One afternoon, about a month after I'd left, I walked by a small art gallery near my new place. An advertisement in the window caught my eye. Some local artist was showcasing paintings that emphasized coded messages about heartbreak and redemption. I stood there, reading the description, thinking how absurd it was that it mirrored the motif of Evelyn's painting, though in a very different context. I felt a pang of longing for how I used to share her passion for creativity. But then I shook my head and walked on. At work, I got a significant listing in a nicer neighborhood. It was the first piece of good news in a while. I threw myself into staging the property, hosting open houses, talking up the features. My clients were a middle-aged couple on the verge of retirement. Seeing them hold hands, excited about this new chapter of their life, it stung me with envy. But it also reminded me that not everyone's marriage ends in flames. Some people, it seems, do figure out how to stay together. Good for them. I remember sitting in the empty living room of that property after an open house, letting the late afternoon sunlight fall across my feet. I sat there cross-legged, exhaling a long breath. And I thought about the last words I said to Evelyn. I'm already gone. I wondered if that was true, or if part of me still lingered in the ashes of our life. Because you can't just erase someone from your heart, no matter what they've done. That was the day I decided I needed some kind of closure, even if it was just my own silent farewell. So I drove back to the old house. It was late again, but not quite as late as before. The windows were lit up. I saw her silhouette behind the curtain. She was pacing, or maybe cleaning, hard to tell. For a moment, I wanted to go inside, sit her down, and ask her point blank, "Why did you do it?" But a deeper instinct told me it wouldn't matter. I already knew her reasons, or at least the shape of them. She'd grown dissatisfied, restless, craving something I wasn't giving her. The details were almost secondary. I left the car this time, though. I walked up to the porch, noticed that the bulbs I'd changed out a few months ago were still there, casting a faint warm glow on the steps. That made my chest tighten. I approached the door, hearing a faint hum of music from inside. My heart was beating faster, urging me to knock. But I slipped the old front door key from my pocket, the one I'd taken. I placed it on the doormat. Then I stood there a moment, hand trembling with the desire to pick it back up. I clenched my fist, pressed it against my chest, and stepped away. I turned, and without a word or a note, I left. That was how I said goodbye to that life. No dramatic confrontation. No last-ditch attempts to reconcile or to tear her to shreds with my anger. I had done enough damage with the projector show and the humiliations. Some might say I should have forgiven, or at least sat down like adults. But I couldn't. Or rather, I wouldn't. This was my choice. To walk away in silence. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. I remained in my small apartment, gradually turning it into something homier. I bought a new couch, a simple one, but comfortable. I stocked the kitchen with spices, started cooking for myself. I even resumed going to a different gym, one farther away. It helped me channel my frustration back into something physical and constructive. One day, I ran into an old friend of Evelyn's. She told me in passing that Evelyn had resigned from the gallery and was moving to Seattle to stay with her brother for a while. She seemed really shaken up, the friend said, and she told me to tell you that she still loves you, in case I saw you. I just shrugged and said, I appreciate it. I guess that's all I could muster. Sometimes, late at night, I recall the look on Evelyn's face when I turned on that video in front of everyone. The terror, the regret. There was a moment when I almost felt sorry for her, but the memory of betrayal always overshadowed that pity. I don't regret exposing her. Maybe it was cruel, but it was honest. It was the only way I knew how to externalize the internal devastation she caused me. Now, the strangest part is how quiet my world has become. I often sit by my window, gazing out at the street. Sometimes neighbors pass by, couples walking dogs or pushing strollers. I wonder if they sense my presence, if they see the shape of a man behind the curtain, a man who lost what he thought he'd keep forever. Probably not. They're absorbed in their own lives, as they should be. People think the hardest part is the initial discovery of the affair, that gut punch realization that you've been replaced. But for me, the real agony is the aftermath, the slow unraveling of dreams, the nights spent alone, forced to rebuild a sense of self, knowing that the person you loved chose someone else, even if only for a few sweaty hours in a gym, is a special kind of torment. It's not just about sex. It's about the intimacy, the affection you assumed was sacred. It's about the possibility that maybe you were never enough. I've told myself 1,000 times, it wasn't me, it was her. But deep down, I still wonder if there was something I lacked. Some spark, some edge. That's the part that gnaws on your confidence, that echoes in your head when you try to sleep. Yet, ironically, I'm calmer now than I was before. It's like the world is simpler when you're alone. I have no illusions left, no false comfort. Maybe that's why my voice, when I speak these days, comes out steady and measured. People around me mistake it for peace. They don't realize it's a quiet born from devastation. A part of me died when I showed that video to our friends and relatives. The part that believed love could be unconditional and safe. When the memory hits me like a wave, I let it. I let it wash over me until it recedes. Then I move on, focusing on the next day's tasks, the next listing, the next phone call. It's mechanical, sure, but it keeps me moving forward. In some ways, I've become a ghost in my own life, drifting from one routine to another, waiting to see if a spark of genuine emotion will light up inside me again. I have no illusions about reuniting with Evelyn, nor do I want to. Even if we tried, there would be no trust. And without trust, a marriage is just a legal arrangement, an empty stage. I'd rather stand alone than pretend something so hollow. Sometimes, late at night, I catch myself remembering the faint smell of that diffuser I replaced, the odor of paper and dust, how it lingered in every room, filling the air with an essence of something old, something burnt. That was my subtle revenge, my quiet warning that the structure of our marriage was turning to ash. And she never even realized it. Maybe if she had, she would have understood how far gone I was before I finally left. I still have the photo album. Ironically, I found it while packing up more of my old stuff. I almost threw it away. Then I hesitated. One day, maybe I'll need to remind myself of how naive I once was, how I believed in us so completely. Or maybe I just keep it out of morbid curiosity, a record of my own stupidity. Some nights, in the calm hush after the city goes to sleep, I open that album. I look at the pictures of her in that red dress, standing with that other man in front of the same doors. The stabs of jealousy and anger have dulled, replaced by a pang of quiet regret. My chest tightens, but the tears don't come. I trace the edges of the photos with my fingertips, noticing details I missed before, the faint reflection of a sunset on the glass behind them, the single droplet of condensation on a wine glass she was holding. I wonder if she realized, even then, that she was crossing a line we might never return from. But those thoughts fade. I close the album and remind myself that I chose this outcome. I orchestrated the big reveal. I humiliated her, outed our private mess to half the neighborhood. I did it because I was angry, because I felt powerless, because I wanted her to hurt like I did. And for better or worse, I succeeded. There's a twisted satisfaction in that. But satisfaction doesn't equate to joy or healing. It's just a release, like a final exhalation of toxic air. I've started seeing a therapist recently, an older man who doesn't mince words. I told him the basics, not all the gory details, but enough. He asked me if I considered that revenge might keep me chained to the pain. I said I didn't care. I told him revenge was the only thing that made sense at the time. He just nodded in that wise, detached way therapists do. Then he told me, one day you might realize there's a life beyond that moment. I snapped back, I'll worry about that later. He just scribbled something on his notepad and let it drop. That conversation has haunted me a bit, because I do wonder what my life will look like in a year, 2 years, 5. Will I still be the man who found his wife's hidden codes and replaced the entire scent of his house with the smell of burnt paper? Will I still be the man who played that humiliating video in front of a room full of people? Or will I find a way to breathe again, to let the bitterness fade? I don't have an answer yet. For now, I wake up, I go to work, I come back to a quiet apartment. I cook dinner, maybe watch a movie, then fall asleep. The next day, the routine repeats. It's a lonely existence, but it's simple. And simple is all I can handle right now. Sometimes, late in the evening, when I'm lying in bed, I hear the phantom echo of her breathing. Too light, too calm, like the night I first realized something was terribly wrong. I imagine her next to me, her chest rising and falling, the way she used to softly whisper my name. And I feel that ache again, that old lament. The sense that she replaced me with someone else so easily, that I allowed it to happen, that I didn't see the signs soon enough, or that maybe I was the wrong sign all along. I keep my eyes shut tight until the feeling passes. Then I inhale a lungful of air, cold and solitary. I remind myself that the pain, while invisible on the surface, is still there, quietly eating at me. And I keep it in check. No outbursts, no dramatic sobs in the darkness, because my emotions are dangerously under control, aggressive in their restraint, as though I'm channeling every ounce of heartbreak into a quiet, seething determination to survive. And survive I will, I suppose. People do. The alternative is to collapse, and I've never been one to give up. That's what remains of my pride. It's late now. The city lights are dimming. My reflection in the window is just a vague outline. I guess this is the final truth. I said goodbye to my marriage. I humiliated the woman I once loved. I let my home become a tomb of broken trust. Then I walked away. Maybe I even gave her the chance to stay there, with the ruins. A part of me thinks she'll either fix that house or let it rot. It doesn't matter to me anymore. I feel a chill creeping into my bones, like a silent echo of the night. I replaced all the scents with the smell of ashes. My chest tightens, but I breathe through it. Slowly, deliberately, I place my hands on my knees, bow my head. There's no rush of adrenaline anymore, no frantic panic. just an empty calm. A sense that something in me has died, but something else is waiting to be born. I remind myself, again, that everything was done for love. Or so she once told me. Or so I once told myself. Now I know love can twist, can corrode. It can turn into a slow poison or a bullet shot straight into the heart. And maybe that's the final message I have for any man who's listening. Sometimes you only learn the truth when there's nothing left to lose. The story ends here, for tonight. Tomorrow is another day, and I'll face it with the same quiet resolve. No more illusions, no more second-hand confessions, just the memory of her too light breathing and a hollow space inside my chest where trust used to live. I can't say I'm at peace, but I'm done. And in a strange way, maybe that's the only closure I'll ever need.